Hello, today I'd like to talk to you about what we call them tactics. They're really just little patterns on the chessboard, and most of your early games are going to be decided, they're going to be about who can spot these patterns. And I'm going to run through them all pretty quickly, one at a time, and you should run through them all one at a time, slowly, and more than once, so that you get to spot these patterns over and over again. And in fact, probably the best way to spot these patterns is practice spotting them with a book of tactics, or on a online site which shows you these tactics. But I don't know if the site's going to show you them as some simple tactics that you need. So here's one of the most basic ideas in chess, that you can take something for nothing. The white rook attacks the black bishop. If it's white's go, the white rook can take the black bishop, and that leaves white enough ahead to win. And quite often in beginner games we see this. One side's got an opportunity to take a piece for nothing. It's very easy to spot on a board when there's nothing else going on. Not so easy when there's a little bit more going on. So let's have a look at that when there's more going on. Here's a game between a couple of characters. One of them's called Daniel, I think that's their surname, and the other one is Goritsky, and again I apologise if I pronounced that incorrectly. But here we go. We've got a game which I don't know if I understand all of those opening moves, but in this position black plays bishop to d6, and I wonder if you can spot what's wrong with that move. Well, white can take it for nothing. Queen takes d6. The simplest idea of all, but it's amazing how often it turns up. Alright, so the next idea is the one that I didn't spot in my game against Ian. When we looked at Scholar's Mate, that a piece can be attacked, which is okay, but it's defended, which sounds as though that's just going to cancel each other out. But there's more attackers than defenders, and that's the next idea. So if you see a piece that's being attacked and defended, but count how many defenders there are, count how many attackers. If your gang is bigger than their gang, you may be able to take it and win out. So here white can attack, can take the bishop. Black can take back if they like, but it will leave white a rook ahead, and that's enough to win with. So more attackers than defenders. Very easy on a nearly empty board. Let's have a look at that on a more full board, and well, let's speed through the moves. These moves you may be familiar with or not, but not all of them may make sense straight away. But here white plays knight to e4, and well, yes, the knight's being attacked by the queen that it's next to, but it's being defended by the queen that it's also next to. But there are two attackers of the poor old knight. Both the knight and the queen attack the knight. It's defended only by the queen. There are more attackers than defenders, and queen takes knight wins the piece, and that should be enough to win with in this more complicated position. So there's another idea. Next idea, the fork, where you attack two things at once. So we're not thinking about one thing being attacked, we're thinking about two things being attacked, and we saw an example of this in the Scholar's Mate video, where a queen on e5 was attacking both the king and a rook on h8. But a very common situation is where you attack something with a knight, and here where knight is attacking the black king, calling check, but it's also attacking at the same time a rook on a8, and we've got black has to move the king, and the knight will take the rook. Not enough to win with in this position, but in a more complicated game it should be fine. So a knight fork, we say. A fork is a bit of cutlery that's got more than 1 point, and this is a move with more than 1 point. Just the check wouldn't be that important, but it attacks two things at once. Let's have a look at that in a more complicated game. And here we go. It's actually a game that I watched. My player, I'm sorry to say, wasn't on the good side of this. So the queen is being attacked by a knight on d5. The queen moved forward to defend itself and attack the knight, but the knight came to c7 with check, attacking the queen and the rook and the king. So it's check from the knight, and we actually call this a family fork when there's more than two pieces involved, and none of those pieces can attack the knight. None of them can defend themselves because the king has to be put out of check, and then we have a the queen will be lost, and that's enough to win the game for black. Next idea is one we call a pin. So the king, the black king and the black rook are on the same diagonal, and white can move to the bishop to f3, and the rook on this square d5 cannot move because it will be check, and you're not allowed to put your king into check. So the rook is pinned and trapped and will be lost on the next move, and white should win that game, being a rook and a bishop up. So that's the pin. Not always easy to see in a complicated game. Let's have a little look for one. So here's a game between a couple of guys, and in this position black played a move that's often played in this funny opening, where we move the queen to the side and it will defend the pawn on this square, and it attacks the pawn on this square. So that's a fork. But black having played their deadly fork, white can play bishop to h5, pinning and winning the queen. We won't win it for nothing. Black will get a bishop for it, but we'll win the queen for a bishop, and that should be enough to win the game. And so good night, nurse. Next idea is very much like a pin, which is called a skewer. And a skewer is again where you get pieces in a line. Here we've got the king and the queen in a line, and the more valuable piece is the one in front. The pins that we've looked at so far, we've got pieces in a line, and the more valuable pieces at the back, and the one in the front can't move. In a skewer, we've got the more valuable piece at the front, and it must move, or should move. And after the king moves out of the way, it doesn't really matter where, we'll win the queen, and that's enough to win with. So pins and skewers, related ideas. Got two pieces, two enemy pieces in the line, and you can perhaps win one of them by bringing one of your line pieces on the same line. Not always easy to see in a more complicated game, and so well, let's miss the moves. We have here a fork by the knight against the queen and the bishop, and the bishop moves, sorry, the queen moves, so the knight forks the queen and the bishop. The queen moves to e4, which attacks the c2 pawn, in fact, it's always also defended. And here white plays bishop to d3, so the queen must move out of the way, and in fact in this position black resigned, but if the queen moves out of the way, we can then take the bishop. So that's a skewer. The queen is skewered against the bishop, and white will win the bishop We'll win the less valuable piece behind the piece in front, but there's a skewer. Okay. Next we have what's called, C.J. Asperda used to call them jumps, but we've got here another little pattern, an arrangement where we've got 3 pieces in a line. 1, 2, 3. But we've got 2 attacking pieces and 1 defending piece. If the bishop moves anywhere, it'll be check from the rook, so the bishop can move wherever it likes, and should be perfectly fine to move, and there will be a check. So we'll pick a nice square for the bishop. If we move it to f3, it's check from the rook, and although black would like to defend the protect the queen or save the queen is lost, so we managed to attack 2 things at once again. So it's like a fork in that respect, but we attack with 2 different pieces on 2 different places. Sometimes it's called an unmasking move. We've unmasked the attack from the rook, or a discovered attack, or a discovered check. So we've got a discovered attack, a discovered check against the king, and the bishop can attack the queen. Another perfectly reasonable way of doing the same thing would be to play this move, bishop to b5, check, check from the rook, of course, not the queen, and again we'll win the queen. That'll be enough to win with. Let's have a look at that sort of move in a different context. So here's a game where if the white knight wasn't in the way, the white queen would like to take the black queen. The knight can move out of the way and call check. So the check isn't discovered, there's an attack that's discovered. So this is knight to f6, check, and that discovers an attack, unmasks an attack by the queen on the other on the black queen, and in this position black resigned. So a discovered attack from the queen, a jump move. Here's a slightly more complicated idea, a net, or a trapped piece. We've got several shown on this board. It's like you've checkmated, but you haven't checkmated a king, you've checkmated a piece. The piece that, for example, down here in the corner, the knight's being attacked by the king, but the squares that the knight could potentially move to are also attacked by the king. So it doesn't matter whether the knight moves or stays where it is, the king's going to take the knight on the next move if he can. So the knight is netted, or the knight is trapped. A more common situation we see top left. The queen has taken a pawn on b7 here, and attacks the rook, but the rook can't move. The rook can't get away, and so the rook is trapped, netted in the corner. And another idea, the bishop is trapped by the black pawns on the king's side here, and the bishop's been chased by the pawns, and perhaps black's last move here might have been to finally trap the bishop. The bishop is trapped on g3, and black will be able to win it next move. So you can all sorts of ways of netting pieces. Simple enough on this board. Let's have a look at a more complicated board. And here's let's play this one through, it's short enough. Queen to f6, getting the queen out nice and early. I say nice and early, but it's not normally a good idea to get the queen out quite so early. White just gets out their pieces on sensible squares. Knight to e7, and now black's moving out their pieces towards the king's side, which I suppose looks sensible enough. But after bishop to g5, the queen, well, it's not pinned, but it is netted. the queen's being attacked and has got nowhere that it can move to that's safe. Anywhere on this diagonal, it's still being attacked by the bishop. Anywhere, if it moves to the side, it's being attacked by the bishop. If it moves forward, it's being attacked by the pawn. If it moves forward twice, it's being attacked by the bishop again. So the queen's absolutely lost. I've made a real mess of that board, haven't I? But never mind, the queen is netted and lost to this bishop move. So that's a net. Another idea, another name for this idea is no retreat, which I know Irving Chernev likes to call it. No retreat. Next idea is removing the guard. We've got a position here where white's got an opportunity to take the black rook. The black rook is defended by the bishop, but if we take the bishop for nothing, we'll then be able to take the rook as well. So rook takes bishop, removes the guard, and king moves, and then we'll win the rook. We've seen an example of removing the guard in our video on the scholar's mate, where black tried to defend the f7 square with a knight on h6, but that was taken by a bishop on c1, if you remember. So this idea, removing the guard, let's have a look at that in a real game. And here's a not an uncommon set of moves. We've got here two examples of removing the guard. Here the white d pawn is attacked twice, defended twice, but black can remove one of the guards, can remove the knight, and now the d pawn is attacked twice, defended once. The queen's being attacked. It's being attacked by the knight, but that knight is pinned and can't move. It's attacked by the bishop. The bishop can move, so we better move the queen, and so the queen takes the d pawn. So successfully removed the guard and won a pawn, perhaps. But the queen is attacked once. The black queen is attacked once and defended once, but white can remove the guard of the queen. Bishop takes c6, check, and the check means that black can't defend by taking white's queen with check before recapturing the bishop on c6. So bishop takes c6 check, and I don't know whether it's worth black moving the queen backwards to try and hang on to anything, but white removes the guard, undermines the defence of the queen, and white will win a queen. One more idea, and perhaps our last idea for today. Another way that pieces can be tied to other pieces while defending is this sort of situation where both black knights are being attacked, boo, but they're both being defended, hooray, but they're both being defended by the same piece. And although we might be able to, we might think for black, well, a rook for a knight's not a bad swap. We get the rook's worth 5 pawns and the knight's worth 3, so white won't bother to take one of the knights, but in fact rook takes knight, and we've discovered that the bishop is overloaded. We've removed the guard by using an overloaded piece, an overworked piece sometimes we say, and this should be enough to win the game for white. We've sacrificed one rook, but for 2 pieces that's not really much of a sacrifice. That's an overall gain. So let's have a look at that in a game. And we have a little sequence of moves now. white can attack this tender point on f7. Familiar theme. Queen to d5 attacks the pawn. If black defends the pawn with knight h6, well, white will just remove it, and black's still in trouble. It may be that black can defend the pawn by moving the bishop to e6, but the bishop was already defending the knight on c6, and the bishop is overworked. The bishop is overloaded, and bishop to e6 is no help at all to black. Well, it stops the checkmate, but we're going to get the bishop can't defend the knight and the checkmate as well, so white wins a piece. So that's all the ideas that I think I'd like to share with you today. Let's just review them. There was taking for nothing, there was more attackers than defenders, and then this menagerie of ideas, forks and pins and skewers, and discovered attacks, overloading and undermining. And they'll all occur in your game, so look out for them. And you have to get into a habit of noticing what's going on in the chessboard, and usually for your first games, the one who notices best will win the game. Anyhow, I hope that's all been helpful, and I hope you enjoy your next game.